Hey everyone, welcome back to News Nexus. I'm Jency, and today we're diving deep into a fascinating concept from game theory that has huge implications for business strategy, the prisoner's dilemma. You might have heard this term before, but did you know it's one of the key drivers behind some of the most important decisions companies make every day? From the competition between rival firms to the strategic partnerships that fuel innovation, the prisoner's dilemma plays a big role in shaping how businesses succeed or fail. Now you might be asking, how does a thought experiment from game theory apply to real-world business? Stick around because today we're going to break it all down and explore how trust, competition, and cooperation come together to make or break companies in today's corporate world. Let's start with the basics. Imagine this scenario. You and another person have been caught committing a crime. The authorities offer you both a deal. If you both stay silent, you get a light sentence. If one of you talks and the other stays silent, the one who talks goes free, and the one who stays silent gets a heavy sentence. But if you both betray each other, you both get a moderate sentence. It's a classic dilemma in which both of you could benefit from cooperating, but there's always that risk that the other party might betray you. So, what do? Here's the kicker. Even though mutual cooperation would lead to the best outcome for both parties, each person, thinking in self-interest, ends up betraying the other. It's called the prisoner's dilemma, and it's a problem that's not just theoretical. It plays out in countless business decisions every day, where companies are often faced with the choice to either cooperate or betray the other side. But how does this work in the business world? Well, let's break it down. In business, companies are constantly faced with decisions where cooperation could lead to mutual benefit, but there's always that risk that the other party might betray you. This happens all the time in things like strategic partnerships, joint ventures, or even when companies are deciding whether to trust each other in a competitive market. The question is, can companies rise above this dilemma? Can they find a way to cooperate, or will they just end up in a cycle of competition and mistrust? Here's where trust comes in. Trust is the ultimate game changer in navigating the prisoner's dilemma. Let's say two companies are considering a joint venture. They could both benefit from working together, sharing resources, reducing costs, and creating new opportunities. But the question is, can they trust each other? After all, one company might be tempted to act in its own self-interest, cutting corners, or undermining the other for short-term gain. If that happens, the entire partnership could fall apart, and both companies would lose out. On the flip side, when companies trust each other, they can accomplish far more together than they could apart. Think about some of the most successful partnerships out there, like Apple and Foxconn. Despite being in a competitive industry, these two companies have formed a long-term partnership that's based on trust and mutual dependence. Without trust, their collaboration wouldn't work. But when both sides cooperate, they create a thriving ecosystem that benefits them both. So how do companies build that trust? Reputation is key. A strong reputation for integrity and reliability is often the best way to ensure that others will want to cooperate with you. For example, look at Amazon. The company has built a marketplace that's based on clear rules and protections for sellers. Sellers trust that they won't be taken advantage of, and Amazon trusts that sellers will abide by the platform's rules. This mutual trust creates a win-win scenario for both sides and allows Amazon to scale its marketplace exponentially. But as we all know, trust can be fragile. It doesn't take much for a company to lose its reputation if it acts opportunistically or engages in underhanded tactics. That's why so many businesses are caught in the cycle of the prisoner's dilemma, where short-term gains might feel tempting, but the long-term consequences of breaking trust can be disastrous. And once that trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. So, let's take a look at some real-world examples where companies face their own version of the prisoner's dilemma. One of the most common places this plays out is in pricing strategies. Imagine two companies that sell similar products. They both want to win customers by offering the best price, but if both companies keep lowering their prices, they're both cutting into their profits. A price war might seem like a good idea at first, but in the end, it's a lose-lose situation. Both companies might end up with lower profit margins, and customers might benefit in the short term, but the entire market suffers in the long run. Now think about what could happen if both companies decide to cooperate on pricing, agreeing to set their prices at a sustainable level. If they trust each other not to undercut, they can both make a fair profit while avoiding the destructive effects of a price war. This is where the idea of cooperation really shines. When companies make the choice to build trust, the entire market benefits, not just the two businesses involved. But there's another layer to this. The prisoner's dilemma doesn't just apply to companies negotiating with each other. It can also come into play with customers. Take a company like Uber, for example. On the one hand, Uber is constantly trying to attract more drivers and riders by offering competitive incentives. But if Uber overextends itself with promotions or undercuts drivers' earnings to increase ridership, it can backfire. Trust is the cornerstone of their model. If drivers don't feel like they're getting a fair deal, they'll leave the platform, and the entire service could suffer. The same goes for customers. If they feel like they're not being treated fairly or transparently, they'll turn to competitors. So even when businesses are interacting with customers, the prisoner's dilemma still plays out. Should they cut costs in the short term by offering discounts, or should they maintain the value proposition and invest in long-term relationships? Cooperation between the company and its customers leads to greater loyalty and growth, while defection might provide a quick bump but lead to long-term damage. Now, the interesting thing about business decisions is that they're often not one-time choices. They're ongoing interactions. This is where the concept of an iterated prisoner's dilemma comes into play. In many business relationships, companies interact repeatedly over time. That's when cooperation becomes more appealing. Why? Because in a one-off scenario, defection might make sense, but in an ongoing relationship, the benefits of trust and cooperation are clear. Companies that engage in long-term partnerships or collaborations understand that keeping promises, being transparent, and working together toward a shared goal ultimately leads to better results. It's not just about winning once, it's about building something that lasts. And let's not forget that companies that consistently cooperate, invest in their reputation, and build trust with their partners and customers have a competitive edge. They're more likely to attract long-term collaborations, secure partnerships, and create innovative solutions that benefit everyone involved. So, while the temptation to defect in the short term is always there, companies that focus on long-term trust and cooperation are the ones that come out on top. So next time you hear about the prisoner's dilemma, just remember, it's not just some abstract concept in game theory. It's playing out in boardrooms, on negotiation tables, and even in the decisions you make as a consumer. Trust can make or break a business, and understanding when to cooperate and when to compete is the key to thriving in today's world. Thanks for tuning in to this deep dive into the prisoner's dilemma in business. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update from News Nexus. I'm Jency, and I'll see you next time.